What up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball, New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I am your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow Middlebrook, Garrick Rattler. What's poppin' with you, bro?
It's all good about a week ago. But man, everything's all good on my side, man. I can't complain. The weather's changing. I'm all sniffy and all of that foolishness. But shout out to all the people in the city of New Orleans who are finding ways to get through the days. So shout out to everybody in the city. A couple people came up to me at the Pelicans game against the Pacers, just talking to me about the team and talking to me about the show and the podcast. So I'll give a shout out to those people. You know who you are. I told you I was going to give you some love. But yeah, man, everything's all good on this side and enjoying the sports. I guess you could call it the equinox, where you get football, you get college football and NBA and NFL and all these different sports. So I'm enjoying it. This is kind of my favorite time of the year, especially going into like the holidays and Christmas and Dad's birthday and stuff like that. But also it's election week, so we'll see how that goes as well. So everything's all good on this side, man. Everything on you.
Everything is blessed as well. I like this time of year as well because it's hoodie season, and it's acceptable for me to wear a hoodie on the weekends
everywhere I go
at all times and things like that. But before we get into it, because there's been a couple games since the last time we chopped it up with y'all, make sure you guys will follow us on X, on Twitter, on IG, on TikTok. That's NO_basketball, no E. Make sure you are liking the episode below, and make sure if you're not already, please subscribe to the channel. So we won't touch too much into this, but we have to talk about it just a bit. So after the Warriors series debacle, the Pelicans happened to expand their injury report yet again. CJ McCollum out 2 to 3 weeks with a hip conductor. Herb Jones out with the partially torn rotator cuff. Trey Murphy was already out. DeJounte Murray was already out. You're looking at a solid 2 to 5 weeks before you hope you are potentially healthy as a team. What are your thoughts on that, man? Is it just, hey, everybody's dealing with this, or does it just feel like it's always one step forward, 2 steps back?
Yeah, man, that Golden State trip was exceptionally hellscapish. Outside of the play on the court. I mean, just to lose CJ and Herb just like that. I mean, it is brutal. It's brutal. I mean, we one of the national heads that we like listening to, Tim Bontemps, put out a tweet. It was like, the Pels have gone through so many injuries, missing Trey Murphy and missing CJ McCollum and missing Herb Jones. And then he had to retweet it again because he's like, oh, yeah, by the way, forgot DeJounte Murray as well. And so it's brutal. Again, like I told somebody on Twitter yesterday, they were saying, going into that Pacers game, if they beat the Pacers, if the Pelicans beat the Pacers, would you buck them up and think differently about them? And I told that, I retweeted it just to Twitter to say, my opinion, you can't make any sweeping good faith judgments about this team at all when you have 3 starters out, a pseudo starter in Trey Murphy, and then also obviously Jordan Hawkins had to miss the beginning of the third quarter, and with his back tightening up, you don't know when it's going to happen, when it's not. It just sucks, man. And it's honestly, back to your question, I don't think it's anybody's fault. I think it's just the basketball gods are not being fair right now, and it's just something the Pelicans have to find a way to get through because. Listen, the season is going to continue. Nobody's going to stop playing. Nobody's going to pause the season so you can get healthy. You just got to put one foot in front of the other and keep playing.
Right. And so to talk just a little bit about those Warriors games, the Pelicans lose both on the road. The first one, 124-106. The second one, 89-104. The biggest takeaways I had from it all was it's good to see a team like the Warriors, who, again, like the Pelicans, pride themselves on being a deep team, but then also know the difference of, hey, you have talent and you have a system that works, or we've been playing in the same system, the same way for years and years and years. And no matter if our best players on the court or our second best players on the court or whatnot, we're going to run our offense the exact same way. I actually think, despite it just being not a great showing from the Pelicans altogether, I actually think it was good for them to have this type of ass kicking earlier in the season to understand there's another sense of urgency. There's another level that we have to play with, knowing that the margin for error is so slim. So what did you take away from that, 0-2 trip to Golden State?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good way to kind of look at what this is. It's still early in the season. I know people what up, Weezy the Great. I know it's panic button and everybody is doom and gloom, but there's a lot. I mean, there are at least 70 plus games left. 70. And I'm old enough to remember when the Saints started 2-0 and everybody was like, plan the parade downtown because they go play the Super Bowl there. And literally in 3 weeks, how your life can change, right? And so, I mean, there's a lot of games left. So that's a good way to think about it. What up, Denzel? A good way to think about it is just, they went into that system. They went into that buzzsaw, and they realized. I mean, listen, it was literally a tale of two tapes, right? You think about team building, you think about injuries, right? And on one side is like, do you need your main guys and the depth doesn't really matter? Or, if you don't have your main guys, does the depth matter? Which pull and pull? And you saw the Pelicans and the Warriors have that, right? Steph and Andrew Wiggins are out of game, but they have everyone else, right? They have the depth behind them. Whereas the Pelicans go in with Zion and Brandon Ingram and basically nobody else in this game. And I tweeted about it. It's not ironic on me that the Pelicans fans and people who have been rooting for the Pelicans for years have been begging, please just let Brandon Ingram and Zion be healthy. We never can see them on the floor. Why can't we get them two on the floor? And the basketball guys said, oh, yeah, how about we just take everyone else and give you Brandon Ingram and Zion? There you go. How about try that one on? So this is a new iteration of injury situation for the Pelicans to have Brandon Ingram and Zion and then everybody else go down. It's just a weird juxtaposition. But I just think coming out of that Warriors thing, again, one of the things, and I tweeted about it yesterday, it was more so when we talk about the Pacers, but I saw it in this second Warriors game, is that even with all of these injuries, you would think that you would want to kind of spread out the minutes and floors and give Brandon Ingram a lineup and give Zion a lineup without each other on the floor. But in a funny way, and we'll get into it when we talk about the Pacers, what I got out of this Warriors games is when you're missing so many top guys and so many guns, it's heavy as the crown because you're going to have to put Zion and Brandon Ingram on the floor together because outside of Hawk, there is just no one that defenses are now going to be like, okay, we need to kind of stay off on this guy because there's just not a lot of outside threat outside of Jordan Hawkins available for the Pelicans right now. And so I think you're going to have to pair those guys, just to give them enough space and enough gravity off of each other to give themselves time to operate offense and do the things that make them great. And so I think you saw some of that in the Pacers game. So we'll talk about that. But all in all, I just think, that trip to Golden State was hellish. It was two burn the tape games for the Pelicans where you just throw it away because nothing worked outside of the first quarter of the second game. And so it just wasn't a fun. And then to throw on the fact that you lose CJ and Herb for an extended period of time afterwards, just, insult to injury.
Yeah.
Or injury to insult.
Yeah, you're not kidding. I mean, I kind of disagree. I think that there's a lot of learning lessons. Sometimes you learn more from failure than you do from win. And I think that there's a lot to learn from, like I said, getting your ass kicked twice in Golden State without Steph. Like, it wasn't just that everybody was injured. The defense wasn't very good. Zion and Brandon Ingram were turning the ball over a ton. They weren't shooting a whole lot of threes. So, like, there were a lot of things that, regardless of who's on the floor, we talk about the Pelicans' identity and them playing to it every single night, that they just were not doing. Like, the defensive pressure wasn't that great, right? And in the second game, you start to see that kind of take another step forward. And they put focus on that. They just couldn't score. To your point, Brandon Ingram and Zion combined for 61 points, and it's still not enough, and you still lose. But it's all about, again, not always that you lose, it's how you lose. All right, you lost because most of your role players weren't available, but your two best players played well, and your two best players are shooting more threes than they ever have combined, and your two best players are playing off each other, to your point, which we'll get to, but also they kind of learn to gain rebound a little bit better. That was my biggest concern. You and I talked last week, like, is DeJounte Murray or Trey Murphy not being available hurting the team more? And you lean toward DeJounte for his ability to play make. And I lean toward Trey because nobody was rebounding and the Pelicans were getting out-rebounded every single game. Well, they started to do that more because they realized the margin for error was so small. And then you got to see a little bit more Yves Missi. And again, the more Yves Missi, in my opinion, the better. And that leads us into this Pacers game. So, again, you get the disturbing news about CJ and Herb, and all of a sudden you're like, well, this isn't going to be good. The Pacers just came off a good win versus the Celtics, need them for the first time this season. You know that the Pacers can get buckets up. You know that the Pelicans have been struggling to score. And, oh, by the way, take out CJ McCollum and now Herb Jones. And you're like, this could be a problem. But throughout the course of this game, it didn't start off so hot. Like, it was like a 7-0 run, and you're like, uh-oh. Here you go again. But you saw a lot of positives in this game and hopefully some things that the Pelicans can build off of. So what were some of the things that jumped out to you with the matchup versus the Pacers?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, I think you got to give it to Zion and Brandon Ingram because, again, you go into this game, you just learn about Herb and CJ and how long they're going to be all right. Like, this isn't like day-to-day type stuff. Like, you find out like for the next couple of games or at least 2 to 4 weeks, these guys are not going to be there. You already know Trey isn't available to play, and DeJounte, we got 5 to 6 weeks out of him a week ago, so we know he's not coming through the door. And so you go into this game, like you said, I everything against you, right? The proverbial back against the wall game. People are doubting Zion's ability to be a good NBA player again. People are now questioning Brandon Ingram. You putting up these numbers, but are they empty stats and things like that? And you come against a Pacers team, like you said, coming off of a Celtics win and really has been the darling of the NBA for a while, right? Everybody last year was the Pacers, basically their prima donna pageantry to the NBA where everybody was rooting for Tyrese Halliburton and things like that. So you had a lot of things going against you. And Zion and Brandon Ingram, even a bad start to the first quarter where the offense just looked so bogged down. And then you turn around and you watch Ben Mathurin get layup after layup, Nesmith get layup after layup. And it looked like the Pelicans were just going to fall flat on their faces. But when the superstars are superstars, it will give you a shot in every game. And you saw Zion and Brandon Ingram figure out very quickly that, like we talk about when we play in the rec in the proving grounds of 2K, it's gonna be a me and you game. And so they decided to put their fingerprints on all aspects of the game: rebounding, assists, defense, things like that. And it empowered guys. As long as those guys are keeping you afloat, that's how you get good games out of Jordan Hawkins. That's how you get good games out of Brandon Boston. And you bring Yves along, and he's able to contribute in ways because you're led by your two best players. And it's again, heavy is the head that wears the crown. Like, this is just what it's going to be until reinforcements arrives. And it's not fair. I tweeted a bunch of times yesterday. It was very unfair, and it's to what I was telling you about having personnel on the floor and these lineups where Brandon Ingram was just at the top of the key with all the sets of eyes looking at him, and they run one set, it doesn't work, and it's BI, here's 13 seconds, do what you do. And we saw that it took Willie Green to sub in Zion and create that space, that gravity. And that's what I mean. Like, you're going to have to play those two guys together. It might be extended minutes. Like, you might be able to sit BI and Zion, apart from each other for a minute here or there. But with all of these guys out, they're going to have to create the gravity for each other because I saw TJ McConnell turn his back to Jose Alvarado and put one foot in the paint and look Brandon Ingram in his eye while he was at the top of the key. And it happened 2 or 3 possessions. And then Zion got subbed in and B.I. scored a quick 5 points because he had more room to do it. So I think this Pacers game, one, what you really got out of this was that Brandon Ingram and Zion or should be finally understanding that it's going to be you two guys, I'm talking about on both sides of the floor leading this team. And they're very capable of doing it. You saw it in this game. And I think the other thing that we saw is that you're going to have to get a good game out of Hawk, obviously, but somebody else is going to have a Brandon Boston game. Somebody is going to have how Jose hit those threes at the beginning of the game to kind of keep the team going. You're going to have somebody else have that kind of game. But they put up 125 or 130 points without CJ and Trey. So obviously the Pelicans are able to do it. They need to take this film and bottle this up, and this is how they need to play moving forward, including Brandon Ingram shooting threes, including Zion pulling threes. So I think for me, the main thing I got out of this game was that Brandon Ingram and Zion realizing that the crown is heavy and that it's gonna be among them. As cliche as it sounds, they have to be the driving force. It cannot be anyone else while all these injuries. It has to start with B.I. and Zion.
Right. I mean, it's always been that way. And to your point, it sounds like a cliche, but like we said last year, it wasn't that way. The role players were playing a lot better than Zion and B.I. the majority of the season. It was them ultimately not being available at the end that caused the season to self-destruct. But it's not just a assured thing that your best players are going to play like your best players. And so to your point, I think that, the switch was sort of flipped a little bit. I think that there is and we'll get into this. I think that there's a difference between, going in the season thinking this is the role I'm going to play. And then 2 days before the season, somebody gets sick. The season starts. DeJounte goes out. And all of a sudden you're asked to do things that you didn't plan to do going into the season. And I think it took a little bit of Brandon Ingram and Zion getting a rhythm as facilitators again, right? In this game, you saw 17 assists to only 5 turnovers. Like, that's what you need them to play like, and that's how you need them to be. And yes, when DeJounte Murray gets back and Trey Murphy gets back and CJ McCollum gets back and Herb Jones gets back, when all those people get back, you'll have more answers to the test. It won't just be, hey, DeJounte is our point guard and he's going to get everybody set up. It's okay if DeJounte is not available or DeJounte's having an off game. How do we generate looks that we love this way? Because we've been doing it for 3/4 of the season anyway, right? So you're going to need that. And to be honest, we've always talked about that. That's what's been missing from the B.I. and Zion duo this entire time. Not just availability, but the ability to play off one another like a duo. It's different to have star talent over here and star talent over there, and your turn, my turn. But as you saw at the end of that game, and again, the Pelicans are 2-0 in clutch games. Go figure. Go bet on it in Vegas. Like, as you saw them play off each other, you saw easy looks for each other on the other, and that's what you've been clamoring for. Like Zion said when he was interviewed after the game by Andrew Lopez, he's like, everybody's saying that we can't work and we can't hoop together. We just got to go show it. And you're seeing the fruits of that labor. That's what the Pelicans need. If everyone was healthy or if nobody was healthy, they need their 2 best players to work in concert, similar to when you see dynamic duos all across the league. I got to talk about Yves again because I just had to talk about Yves. This was his first start. We've been talking about it on this podcast. We've posted on Twitter. How long would it take? This was involuntary. Like, they asked with Green after the game. He probably did not want to start Yves, but he had no choice. Daniel Tyson's banged up, and Trey's not available, and whoever. They had no choice. But for a guy who hadn't played a whole lot of basketball, hadn't started any NBA games, to come out and have a huge block on Miles Turner that gets the momentum going, have a huge dunk to turn the momentum the other way, and to get 10 boards on a team that desperately needs rebounding. Garrick, wouldn't it be a bad thing if Yves Missi just stayed in the starting lineup for the rest of the season? Like, talk me off that ledge here.
No, I agree. I said last episode the things that Yves does well belong in this starting lineup, and the things that Tice does well belong in with the bench lineups. Yves plays well off of talent, and because he's so raw, he is out there using the God-given athletic talent that he has. And so the things that you need him to do that he's good at supplement the things that the starting lineup are, have issue with: rim protection, things like that, rebounding. He does that well just off of instinct. So you want to put him in there. Whereas Daniel Tice, also, he's Missi at 7 foot tall. When you think about Daniel Tice, he's shorter and he's able to bang and box out with people a little bit more than a guy like Yves Missi right now at this moment. And so you want to let him run with smaller units and smaller bigs. And most people don't have a bruiser coming off the bench as their five. It's more like a small ball five and whatever the case is. And so you can have him out there with bench lineups. And so what you saw from Yves is what you would see if he played. I mean, it came out of Willie Green's mouth in the preseason. Yves looked really good with the starters in the preseason. And sometimes you don't have to overthink things. You can just say, that's probably something that's going to go on more often. And so the things that Yves does belong in this starting lineup. And I think in necessity or whatever the case is, however we get to Yves Missi being the starter, by hook or by crook, I think it needs to happen very, 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 very soon.
Yeah. And the other thing that we didn't talk about in regards to this, I love the way the Pelicans, now they didn't convert. They end up fouling Yves on a dunk attempt. But I love the way they started the game. It was a pick and roll with Brandon Ingram and Yves screaming down the lane. Now, in the first game with DeJounte Murray, you saw Yves have his career high, 12 points in that game because DeJounte just kept throwing the lob over and over and over. On this one, B.I. threw a great pass. It was a foul. It should have been free throws, but it was not. But that's why I want him starting with that lineup so they get more used to throwing it up. Because to your point, to start this all off, when there's not a lot of your key rotation players available, there are more eyes, there are more people concerned with Brandon Ingram and Zion. And something that they just have not had available over the last few years is someone to take attention from them vertically. And they just haven't been. You can see it like so many times there's been a turnover because somebody throws the ball at Yves' ankles because they're not used to throwing lobs because JV wasn't jumping like that, or they just didn't have 7-footers. And Yves doing this, pointing up, like throw it up. The more and more he plays with those players, the more and more they're going to get used to throwing it up. And I think that that's an element to this team that hasn't been unlocked that is going to be killer as they go forward throughout the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, just the first game, the game that we went to, the season opener, there was an exact play where Brandon Ingram ran a pick and roll, and instead of throwing that alley, he threw it at Yves' foot, and it was a turnover, and Yves pointed up. Now, in a couple of games here, first play of the game, out of the game, we run the pick and roll, and it's going right up to them. And so time on task with Yves with this starting lineup, I think is great. And also, Yves does a lot for Brandon Ingram and Zion because first of all, he's a really good screen setter. I mean, he is really good at setting screens. But even in pick and roll, if you're playing pick and roll with a person and the defender is playing the pick and roll, if I'm playing the ball handler and this guy is rolling, similar to what you say with JV, if I know I don't have to play the lob threat, I can play that pass down low, and I can play, throwing it over if you want to just throw it over. But if you're a lob threat, now I have to play to jump, and so I'm not so sold on you trying to stop you. And so he helps out with his rolling and his vertical threat. He helps BI and Zion with a lot of spacing as well, just in those things. And it's little things like that get you 2 extra points for BI, 4 extra points for Zion in a game where he doesn't have that because it's so easy to play that pick and roll between those two with like-minded people. Whereas if you have Yves Missi, if you play that with a guard or try to hide your wing on him, he's getting dunked on. Ask Miles Turner.
Right. So you go from one young player and one first-round draft pick to the one last year, and that's how we'll wrap up this Pacers wrap-up. Listen, I've told you before, and you and I have talked on the pod. Jordan Hawkins is my favorite player to watch on the Pelicans because of his brash confidence, but even more so this season because of the attitude and the swagger that he plays with. Like he was getting in the mix with my other draft boo, Benedict Mathurin. They were going back and forth throughout the game. But you and I were texting throughout the game. Even when Hawkins, like he started the game poorly, he was like 1 for 6. Obviously, he got to a point where he had 23 points in the game. It was the third leading scorer behind Zion BI. But even when he has bad games, it's not because like he was playing out of character or he was wilding out. It's just because he was missing. And for a guy like that, you're okay when they miss because you know they're probably going to end up making more than they miss in the long run anyways. And like to watch his game develop, and I think that not having CJ and not having DeJounte and not having all these other guys that would play more minutes than him, you're getting to see him develop a chemistry with Zion BI. There were so many two-man actions where it was just BI and Hawk on one side of the court, just Zion and Hawk on one side of the court. And for a player in year 2 that didn't get to play a whole lot in year 1, that's going to be a huge part of the team this year. Those are vital minutes. And like you can see his confidence growing over and over, game after game, make or miss. You're seeing his NBA readiness grow and before your eyes, and to see his game grow and to see that the coaching staff is letting his game grow by making him a part of the game plan. Like again, when everyone does, if everyone ever becomes whole at some point, hopefully that is the problem, and hopefully you run to the point where somebody got to sit because Hawk's not sitting, and somebody got to sit. Like hopefully you get to that point. But what did you see from Jordan Hawkins, which again, he's been the main rotation player to deliver so far this season?
Yeah, I tweeted yesterday, man, Hawk is going to be so good when this team, if and when this team gets healthy. Here's just a couple of things about Hawk. So first of all, I see it in the chat about Javonte Green, and we talked a lot about who was going to be the new Najee for the team. My money was on Javonte Green, but who knew it was going to be Jordan Hawkins? Like Jordan Hawkins is out there talking trash, talking reckless. I mean, I love his quote after the game. I don't fear nobody but God. That is the kind of mentality you want to have for your starting cornerback and for your shooter on the team, your young shooter. So just that mentality, and we talked about this. Me and you were talking about this. That mentality, that strong will, determination, not scared of anyone, it shows in Jordan Hawkins' game because he's in there mixing it up with rebounds. I told you, I found my first tweet about Jordan Hawkins rebounding, came in his 4th game as I was like, man, this guy's a really good rebounder. He's in the mix for rebounding. He's defending as I tweeted, your Kyle Korver is not supposed to be chasing people off and pitching people shots, chase down blocks. He just has a grittiness to him that you didn't think that he had this with him because he very rarely played, and when he did, he was kind of like let's just let him shoot, and now he's a part of the offense. There were times where they didn't have anything going, and Jordan Hawkins was like, to hell with it. I'll go ISO. He knocked down some big shots, isolation, to keep the Pelicans and to keep them close and to break some of that momentum. And then, I mean, his back tightened up. Everybody was like, oh, well, just add him to the list. And here comes Jordan Hawkins, Willis Reed, like with the hoodie up, coming in and knocking down shots. Just a gritty performance from a young dude who was shelved last year as a national champion. And I think the like you said, the minutes that he's getting now, it helps for young players. But what it does for a guy that's this confident, when he can continue to not only contribute to games, but help the team win, help the team overcome, insurmountable injuries, he's helping out on that. When you pour that kind of gasoline on an already lit fire, I mean, he's going to be so good. He's right now getting the third best. And really, sometimes I told you, he's been guarded like a 5-alarm fire. So sometimes he's getting the second best guy because they know not to guard him. I mean, not to leave him open. Can you imagine? That's why I say if and when the team gets better, when he's like the fourth or fifth or sixth option on on the team as far as offensive wise, and like on the floor, he's getting, we gotta worry about him, but like we got Zion, Bi, Trey, DeJounte to worry about, and here's Hawk attacking. And the one thing I'll finish it off with this. We talked about, what were some of your hot takes going into the season about most improved player, and Jordan Hawkins winning. Right now, Jordan Hawkins is the most improved player on his team. He really is. His ability to attack closeouts and do it in a very smart way. Like he's living in the paint when people close out hard on him. He's dribbling, he's driving past them and at the rim and laying the ball up, finishing through contact. These are the things that you wanted to see from him, getting stronger. His body has not, the frame has not caught up, but he's tougher. He's more grittier. He's more willing to get into the paint, attack closeouts. And now, if you're attacking him hard and closeouts because you're doubling Zion and Brandon Ingram, he's making you pay over and over again. And so it just was a super, super impressive performance, tough, gritty performance from Jordan Hawkins to couple with some of these other times. And again, to have it come off of, you started off 1-6, you're back 1 of 6, your back was tightening up. Just the mentality and the toughness to push through that and be there for your team. Zion himself shouted him out at the end of the game. And I think it's worth noting just how good of a game, especially when you think of all the context around it, that Jordan Hawkins had last night against the Pacers.
Right. I think that he's going to be so crucial for this team this season and moving forward, just because of how his skill set plays off the best players off this team. And so, to your point, while you're asking him to do more and he's leveling up at a level that you didn't expect him to grow as quickly as, that can only be beneficial for the team. So my question to you is this: like, we talked about the panic meter and the Pelicans being 3-3 and losing to Steph-less Golden State and losing to the lifeless Portland Trailblazers and things like that. Where's your panic meter? Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, like, do you think it's closer to 10 where, there's a lot of missing pieces and a lot of holes that Bi and Zion have to account for? Or do you think it's closer to 1 where they practice all off season a certain way, and then shortly after or shortly before the season start, you lose Trey, shortly after the season start, you lose DeJounte, and all of a sudden you're figuring out on the fly?
I would say mine is at a 4, and this is the reason why I would say 4. Again, you can't make any sweeping adjustment. I mean, sweeping judgments about this team with all of these players out. I do think that at some point there is a tipping point where you're just like, all right, I understand you want them to run the same offense, and I understand you want them to just continue to plug a person in and out, but you just can't replace Trey Murphy with Brandon Boston and expect everything to go well, or replace CJ McCollum with, Jamel. And, God bless these guys. They out there hooping and balling and doing what they can. But at some point, you paid CJ $30 million for a reason. You paid Trey Murphy his 100 and whatever million for a reason, right? Like Herb got his money for a reason. He made first team all defense for a reason. DeJounte, you traded for him for a reason. There's a reason why these guys are valued at what they're valued in things. And so at some point, there's just a tipping point where it's like, okay, but at the same time, and I think this issue that I have kind of addressed itself yesterday, and I want to see how it is moving forward. As long as Zion and Brandon Ingram are on the floor, there should not be a time where the Pelicans are down 30 to a Warriors team or to 20 to a Blazers team, whatever the case is. They are just too good for that. They just are. The Pacers they gave up 50 plus to Paolo. They gave like 40 up to Jason Tatum to let him get him. So they're not the greatest defensive team. And so again, you wanted to go in and show a good showing, and the Pelicans did. So I give them a lot of credit for that. But you're going to be seeing the Cavaliers coming up soon and the Magic coming up soon, and you're going to have to face some tougher defenses. And I want to see, can Bi and Zion take what happened yesterday and, like you said, have that switch flip where they say, okay, we just got to do more. You can't come out and be passive in first quarters. You can't come out and turn the ball over and just be lackadaisical with it. You have to compete on the defensive end. And again, is it fair to ask them to do that night in and night out? No, absolutely it's not. But the NBA is unforgiving. It's why you get paid what you get paid. And so you just, again, heavy is the head that wears the crown. And so they have to go out and do what they did yesterday, night in and night out. You're going to get what you're going to get from the guys, but you have to be the bedrock of the team. Talking about Brandon Ingram and Zion. And so role players are going to play, better at home. Right now, the Pelicans team is Zion, BI, halfway Hawk, and then rest of the players are role players. And so they're going to play better at home. You got a homestand coming up with all of that. But I want to see if they can take BI and Zion can take what happened against the Pacers and make it a launch pad movement. Because if they play how they played yesterday, they should be able to stay in these games. And then at the end, let Zion and Brandon Ingram be the closers or whatever the case is. But they have to do this every single night in, night out. Is it fair? No, but it's just the way it is. So I'm at a 4. I don't think it's time to push the panic button at all. Obviously, the injuries are what they are, and it's reiterative, it's repetitive, but it's just the way it is. At some point, there's a tipping point. But I do think I want to see more from Brandon Ingram and Zion. What I saw yesterday, I want to see more of that moving forward, and not what we saw in Golden State.
I'm probably a 1 or 2, to be honest with you. And here's why. First of all, the Pelicans are 3-3. Mm-hmm. There are 82 games in a season. That means that there are 76 more games to be played before anything is decided. Like we talked about off the pie. Wasn't there a point in time where the Pelicans were first in the West and then all of a sudden ended up not making the playoffs, and the Jazz were first in the West and then in January and then didn't make the play? There is so much to happen between now and the end of the season. If you look at the NBA standings, most of the league has 2 or 3 losses. And it's not always because they played against a great team and they battled it out. It's they played against the Nets and lost. They lost. They went against the Hornets and lost. They went up against the Pistons and lost. There's a lot of that because there's a lot of teams trying to figure each other out and trying to understand a little bit more about how do you need to play this season versus how you played last season, and how do you get that rhythm back that you haven't been playing with for a couple of months. And I just think it's the NBA feeling itself out and everyone to get this way. I watched the Mavericks the other night versus the Rockets get blown out. I'm this isn't the team that went to the finals last year. There's just so much more for stories to play out and for teams to play out that the panic stuff early in the season, I just don't understand. Now, to your point, yeah, there's been some bad play and there's been a lot of it. But here's what I'll say when it comes to that. Brandon Ingram ended the season not on a great note with an injury, went in rehab. If you really listen to what he said, rehab a lot of the offseason to get to where he needed to go. Zion Williamson ended the season with an injury and rehabbed and got to a point where he was ready to go and then got sick and probably lost all of his momentum, all his rhythm. The likelihood that those two were just going to forget how to score was not really, at the top of my mind. And so to your point, as long as those two are available, I think that they'll be able to put themselves in positions to at least compete. You may not win versus some of these top teams while you're down so many players, but you should be able to keep yourself in game. But why I think that my panic meter is closer to 1 or 2 is because I think that getting your ass kicked this way illuminates the ways of how you need to play. To your point, the Pacers are not a good defensive team. But also, the Pacers force you to push the pace. There were so many points yesterday where the Pelicans just didn't know that the Pacers had thrown the ball up the court, and they got 2 points. And then it forced them to play up tempo. Well, yeah, not every team's going to be as bad as the Pacers on defense. But now you're look what happens when we play up tempo. Look what happens when Zion is pushing the ball up court and the defense doesn't have time to set up and throw 5 bodies at BI or before 5 bodies. Look what happens. Look at the fruits of our life. Look what happens when we play above the rim and there's nobody that can jump with us. Look what happens when we ratchet up and defensively in the second half of games. That's how you have to play. And so regardless if you have your best players available or not, if you establish a standard of anyone who touches the court has to play this way, like Brandon Ingram, they asked him, like, obviously you scored a lot of points, had a lot of assists yesterday. He was like, the most important thing, or the thing I'm the most proud of, is how I played defensively. If your second best player is saying that, and your first best player is putting it all out there on the offense and defensive end, everyone else has to do it too. And so I think that during this peak, to your point, and to kind of cap off the show, we have never seen BI playing at his peak powers and Zion playing at his peak powers together. I don't mean like on the same court together. They've had good games where they both have 30 and stuff like that. That's not what I mean. I mean in cohesion. And if this situation is forcing them to play in cohesion, it can only be a good thing for the Pelicans moving forward. It can only be something that elevates this team as more and more rotational players or non-star players come back into the lineup. That, oh, by the way, when you come back, look at the extra space that you get, Trey. Look at the extra space that you get, CJ, because we know how to play off each other, and all of a sudden there's more bodies leaving you, right? And I think when they put those things together and the health kind of catches up with the rest of the team, and Yves Missi is forced to play because you have to play him, that's only going to help you in the upcoming weeks when, again, you have 76 more games to go. So the next one of that 76 is tomorrow versus the Atlanta Hawks, where the Pelicans take on their second game in this 4-game homestand versus a team that is also dealing with a ton of injuries. Unfortunately, I don't think you're going to see – you're definitely not seeing DeJounte Murray. I don't think you're going to see Dyson Daniels either. He's been out injured. You might see a little bit of Larry Nance. I don't think you're going to see Cody Zeller. So, like, it's not going to be like a reunion of the trade like that. I don't think that's happening tomorrow. But it's a game that the Pelicans need to win to get back on track, to build some momentum versus a team that is not playing for a whole lot anyway. And down this much talent, you know, you need to be able to take advantage of at home. So what you got left for the people, Garrick, when you look at this matchup and we wrap up the show?
Yeah, the Hawks game is going to be interesting. Trae Young is on a freaking heater, a binge, whatever you want to call it. I think he's had 2 or 3 35, 13 games this season. And so he's gonna come ready to shoot the lights off. And so you're gonna have to come defensively, right? You're gonna have to be ready to step up. I would even go so far as try to get the ball out of his hands if you need to, double him if you need to, because it's not. Jose is just not going to be able to guard him by himself. And so you're going to have to play, a team scheme against them. But on the other side, I don't think they have a matchup for Zion. Like, Zion had to go against Draymond twice, and Donovan Clingan was able to just stand in the paint in front of the rim like it was 1953, and, just stuff like that. And so now this Hawks team, I don't think they have the matchup, the physical matchup against them. They're kind of introducing the number 1 pick, Ricochet, into the game, and Jalen Johnson is trying to figure out what he is as a player. So they got a lot of things going on with them as well. So if the Pelicans have their 2 main guys, meaning Zion and Brandon Ingram, they should be able to take it into the Hawks front line and get some points there and be able to dominate that way. So they should be able to take this game against the Hawks. Again, you never know when you roll the ball out what's going to happen. But again, role players play better at home, and the Pelicans have a lot of role players right now available for them, and not a lot of like star players. And so those guys need to come and play well. Jose needs to continue to play well. Hawk needs to continue to make shots. But I think Zion and Brandon Ingram should be able to get what they want. And again, I'm hoping this is a platform that they can take off. And we see the pass that's being viral all over. Let that be the wraparound pass to Zion that ended up in the dunk and one. Let that be kind of the story moving forward, that these guys are figuring out how to play, and these guys are figuring out how to dominate and use each other on the floor to make each other better. So I'm looking forward to that. I think the Pels have a good shot in tomorrow's game. So with that being said, as always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO_basketball, no E. That's on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you get your social medias. Most importantly, subscribe to New Orleans.basketball, and we'll see you guys in the next one.